There you go. I like it.
All right, so solid introduction right there. If you don't really know who Azer is, which is unlikely but possible, Azer's been around for how long now? Just in Osu in general?
I think about 4 years now.
4 years? That sounds about right. You've been streaming on Twitch how long?
Pretty close to 4 years as well.
Really? You started streaming right around when you started Osu in general? Yeah. I remember all the jewel mouse shenanigans you did.
Oh god. Yeah.
Was that like your main playstyle initially? Oops.
Yeah.
No one saw that.
The reason that was my main playstyle is because at the time I had a $5 keyboard and it had a lot of input lag. It was very bad.
Yeah.
And the mouse was just a better option. So I didn't play dual mouse to specifically play a weird playstyle. It just happened to be better than the shitty keyboard I had at the time.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
I think you did pretty well on it though.
Yeah.
And it was very gimmicky, like specific. What do you call it? Like, very unique.
Sorry?
A very unique playstyle.
Yeah.
Kind of turned into its own meme.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason it's not really popular. It's because there's no particular benefits to it. It's just weird. It's just weird.
What was your peak rank that you ever got?
I got rank 10 for 3 days.
Rank 10 for 3 days. Days. That was with the score change, right?
Yeah.
I think yeah. And what else did you do outside of playing? You done a bunch of mapping. You do a lot of skin stuff.
Yeah, not anymore. But nowadays I kind of just play the game. But yeah, I've done a few maps, although none of them are good. I did some skins in the past. Some people might have played with Black 2014, a skin collab I did with Quantec. It was the most popular skin of that year for some reason. At the time, I don't know if you remember this, but if you looked at Twitch, you couldn't find a stream that wasn't using that skin. It was really funny. It was really funny.
I already always feel very good when I enter a Twitch stream and someone's using my skin, which isn't even my skin because mine's obviously just like a mishmash of random stuff.
Yeah, well, it's themed around you, so I mean, you could say it's your skin.
All right, so again, for anyone that doesn't really know, Azer mainly plays. Are you still actively playing at this point?
Yeah, I just took a break for the last week or so, but I still play.
Yeah. So something that maybe a lot of people also don't know about Azer is that he is really one of the people that improved very fast. Especially when you think of the United Hidden Heart Rock stuff, that's 2 years ago at this point. So after 2 years of play, you're already doing some pretty crazy stuff. Is there any specific reason for you personally why you think that you generally gravitated towards Hidden Heart Rock, accuracy-based stuff?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple reason actually. I had a few scares with just RSI or injuries in general. It just made it so it was much harder to properly play DT at the time. Because before I even started HDHR, all I did was just play really fast DT maps. Just
oh really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. No, this is before this is 3 years ago.
Before you really got ranks and stuff.
Yeah, this is when I was not even rank 1K, I think. But yeah, then I got a few scares with injuries, and then I just played HHR exclusively, and it just so happened that it worked well. Really?
Okay, so it was basically, if it wasn't for your injury stuff, you would have probably just done DT stuff more than Heart Rock accuracy. Interesting.
Yeah, I really looked up to a guy called Lane in Canada who's no longer playing the game.
I don't think I know him.
Yeah, it's.
Was that his in-game name, Lane?
Sadly, yeah, Lane with a Y.
Huh. I don't think I've seen him. What do you feel were your defining moments in terms of your skill progression over the years? For you, what were realizations or approaches that you've done that you feel help most for you personally?
I'd say the pure amount of honestly it was just a constant a constant line. You know, it was a constant progression. There was no like defining moments that were like, oh, I just progressed a lot. You know.
Oh, you didn't necessarily have
line.
like huge skill jumps. It was more of a consistent.
Yeah, it was pretty consistent.
Okay, because for me personally, well, I mean, I've been playing for a lot longer, so that probably also has something to do with it. Yeah. If you don't know, I've been playing for like 8 years, which is twice as long. But for me personally, when I look back, I know that there's like a couple of moments that kind of defined like a different approach to how I played, and that really just boosted me in terms of skill. Whereas for you, apparently, I mean, that's better to have like a consistent progression. It means you're doing something right that I was not doing the right way. And are there any things that in hindsight you feel like actually hurt your progression a lot? Like certain habits that you picked up or stuff that you were doing?
I'd say there was a few. Mostly, it's also related to the injury. It was just how hard I was tapping every key. A lot of people do that because it helps with accuracy, but like when I was trying to play like really streamy maps and like...
Does it help with accuracy, really? Because you'd think, at least for me personally... Oh, for some people? I would feel like it comes down more to like a flow than just matching. But then again, I don't have context for what it feels like to have good ac, so it's hard for me to say.
Oh boy, you do have much better act than back then though.
It's getting better. Yeah, no, it's getting better, but it's still not good. It's like, especially for my rank, it's below average, but it's better than terrible, what it used to be. Yeah. And where do you feel personally your skill set kind of breaks down in terms of the areas of play?
I think the obvious answer here is just everything that you could call technical play, you know.
But you're very good at technical maps, and you even have some crazy scores on very fast stuff. So it's not necessarily speed.
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is because technical is kind of like a vague term, you know. Like what exactly what's the definition of technical, you know?
Right.
It's just like in general, just playing. I guess a bit of reading plays into it. Just hard patterns, hard rhythm plays into it. I'd say if I have a point in my skill set that's stronger than average or stronger than most players, I'd say it's definitely that one.
Oh, your reading and your accuracy?
Just reading hard patterns, reading hard rhythm, and playing it with good accuracy, and just everything that you would say is technical, you know.
And would you say that is an area that you very specifically focused on? How did you approach specifically getting better in those aspects? Because you chose those aspects to get better at, or were kind of forced into it. But then how did you actually go about practically getting better in those areas? In a little bit less than a generic, you know, just focus on ac, right? Because that's the obvious answer.
About a year ago, I'm sure you've lived this a bunch of times, but after you try to get ranks a bunch of times, it just, for like a long period of time, like months at a time, it just gets really exhausting and really boring. And I needed a break.
Can totally not relate.
Really?
No, of course I can. Of course I can.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it was getting a little boring, and I wasn't really enjoying the game as much. So I decided to focus on tournaments, and that mostly entailed just playing a hell of a lot of hidden. And by playing a lot of hidden and just playing like some fun unranked songs, I guess I just kind of developed. How do I say this? I started liking a lot of technical maps much more than before. So I play a lot of like Spro maps. I play a lot of Fanzine maps. I play a lot of like Akali maps. A bunch of these maps, and it essentially just became all that I played. I would stream for like 3 hours a day, and during that 3 hours, I would play those maps for 3 hours and nothing else. Maybe like a multiplayer here and there, but I would only play those maps. I would never play Hard Rock or DT anymore, and I just only focus on that for about a year. And I guess it's led us.
Time flies, man. Like the last like active memory that I have of you in terms of play is well the United stuff, and then all the drinking streams that we did, which was around that time as well.
Yeah, that was
fun times.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
more than 2 years ago. It's insane.
What shh. What do you personally feel are a lot of kind of goes into the meta, but nowadays obviously everyone is very much speed based. What do you feel are a lot of underrated skills that are not practiced or approached nearly as much as they should? Because I'm thinking that a very obvious thing that a lot of people lack is consistency nowadays, or just general technical stuff. What do you feel are the most obvious ones?
I'd say most aspects that the game doesn't reward very well. So hard maps to read, or like low approach rate maps, easy hidden. You know, people like GN are really good at that kind of stuff. And the game doesn't like necessarily reward anything for that. You know, like you don't get leaderboard ranks, you don't get PP for it, you don't get much, right? So I guess people don't tend to approach those a lot. But just everything about reading in general is an aspect of the game that isn't very popular, I feel.
And how do you feel? What is the difference between someone like GN, who has crazy reading ability? He generally seems comfortable on every AR range, but his accuracy tends to be pretty bad. What is like the difference between someone like him and someone like Toy or someone like Cookazy, who all have really good reading, but they might not be good all around? Would you say that purely comes down to just the fact that they don't really spend time trying to be all-rounded?
Yeah, I think that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, everyone has different skill sets, and Jen is just an example. I think he happens to be the best at that particular skill set, just reading in general.
Yeah, he's insane.
I think that's undeniable, and I think that's purely just because that's what he chose to focus on instead of trying to improve his accuracy or something for ranks. Because I think most of the reason for most players to improve themselves at a particular aspect of play, I think it's literally just a rank up. Not everyone, but I think that's the case for a lot of people.
What do you think in terms of like Vaxi, who is kind of a hidden like easy god? I don't know if you've ever seen him play easy. Like his big black plays, really his DT plays on easy. It's all very much just insane. Do you feel that having that solid reading basis is really what sets apart a lot of these very fast improving players from people like me, who might just spam a lot but not necessarily get as much out of it? What do you feel is the skill that is most bang for your buck in terms of improvement?
I would definitely say aim, actually.
Aim?
Because if you look at all the skill sets, yeah, if you look at all the aspects in the game and you just try to split them up in categories, right? You have, I don't know, aim, speed, and like accuracy and reading, for example.
Right.
Speed and accuracy and reading, they all, well, reading not so much. They all kind of have a skill cap, you know. They all kind of have like a limit that everyone reaches, and then there's not really much to do in the game to push that limit, you know. Whereas aim, all the difficulty that comes from the maps that have been harder and harder these past few years, it's all in aim. For like, there's some minor exceptions for speed, but if you notice, like if you go back 2 years ago, let's say, I'm just gonna use United as an example because it's I don't know, it's appropriate, I guess. I'm just gonna use United as an example. Back then, it was pretty much like very top level of gameplay, right? And it was pretty standard for like an HDHR farm map in terms of speed and in terms of accuracy, but it was particularly hard at the time because it was hard to aim. And now it's been 2 years since then, and there's like 25 scores on it. And the current top level of HDHR is still the same in terms of speed. It's still the same in terms of accuracy, but the aim requirement is like through the roof still. Wow. So I feel like that's the direction that the difficulty of maps are going into. So because of that, I feel like the more investment you put into improving your aim, the better you'll be able to play.
How would you feel about the perspective? The following perspective is that for me personally, I know that my aim is my strongest skill, right? Like I'm moderately consistent at like 8-star no mod full screen jump stuff, but I don't know what kind of laugh that was. Am I insulted? I'm not sure.
Laughing.
But I find that the more I focus on my reading, the more consistent I become on just hitting hard rock, where you would say, like, let's say you look at something like United, I totally have the aim to do that, but I feel like because my reading isn't as on point as it should be, I have a much harder time actually properly aiming everything than I should, right? So I feel personally for me that the better my reading becomes, the easier those things become for me. In that sense, I feel that aim and reading are very much tied together. Like this, if you can't properly read something, then you're just not going to be able to aim it, even though your aim might be super on point.
That's true, yeah.
Because according to that logic, if aim is really the most important, like if I were to be able to aim those 8-star jumps, then I should very easily be able to do stuff like United, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
That's another way to look at it too.
I wasn't trying to undermine your argument. I was just, just a bit of perspective.
Yeah.
Hold on, I've been forgetting to change the topic stuff.
Wow, professional.
Introduction. I know, Azer Fost.
It is professional.
How do you personally feel about people like Kokazi and Marucci and White Wolf and HVIC, people who throughout the years have kind of stood on top of the rest in different different levels of how far they were ahead, but still. And then Kokazi obviously being the prime example. What do you feel differentiates people like that from mere plebeians, so to speak?
From the rest of the world.
I misspelled prodigies. Shh, protégé, man. It's the French. That guy over there, native language is French. The only thing that I forgot is the little thing on the E. What's that called?
Yeah, there you go. The accent.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint because honestly, I've never been there, so I don't really know.
I really like speculating. I really like speculating about stuff like that, though, because if you look at, for example, Kokazi when he came back a little over a year, his raw skill was. I mean, it was still really good, but it wasn't Rafa's Angel Simp level at that point, who were then leading kind of leaderboards, but he very quickly overtook them. So what do you feel makes it so that people like him seem to be able to improve really a lot faster? Do you think it's like an inherent talent thing? Do you think it's because they have this skill set developed, this specific skill set, like overdeveloped that other players haven't focused on?
I think it's partly talent. Like obviously it plays some part into it. I think it's also dedication. They play a lot. They play with the mindset of improving, and I think it's paying off. Because in my opinion, I think that like you see Kokazi, just to use him as an example, you see him play a lot of unranked maps just with mods that like no one can do, and he does them anyway just because it's challenging for him, and that's how he keeps on improving, in my opinion. Like he keeps on challenging himself even though he's already at the top.
And how do you feel he would
is why like he in particular is so good.
How do you feel, because there's a lot of people that push themselves, like take people that go for DT clears, for example. What do you feel or what would you speculate is his approach to make sure that he stays consistent across the board and doesn't just like over focus on one area? Because that's something that a lot of players run into, right? Like they'll focus on crazy hard rock passes, but then they're just super inconsistent. Vaxi has a little bit of that issue where he does this crazy shit, but he's kind of inconsistent in terms of his accuracy and just his overall shit misses. Same for me, not that I'm on that level. How would you say their consistency plays into that?
I think it's just playing a little bit of everything, not leaving any aspect of play behind. I think that's also why Marucci was so praised back then. It's because he could do everything, right? And when you saw him play, that's what he was doing. He was playing everything. And even Kokazi to this day, he still plays everything. You'll see him frequently go for those hard clears, but I mean, you'll see him playing just hidden on like random maps a lot. You'll see him playing DT a lot just to farm, and you'll also see him trying to go for like just hard rock FCs, like on rank maps just for PP. But like, I think just the fact that he kind of does everything and he doesn't focus on one basket, it kind of keeps all his skills, up to par, and I think it helps with the consistency a little bit.
Right. Okay. What do you think about the following? For me personally, what I think sets apart Kokazi and such the most is the fact that and White Wolf is a really good example of this because of his skill set, is their tendency to never compensate on finishing a pattern. Like they will always put finishing a pattern, even if it means they're gonna miss, over just holding that combo. And that comes in from having your reading so on point that is... Toy is a good example as well of someone that does that, but he hasn't really pushed his speed or anything nearly as much. Just perfection of what you're doing over the immediate result, if that makes sense. I feel like that is a common thread in all those players.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that plays a part in it too. Just regardless of the result that they're trying to get, they're always just trying to do it right, you know?
And that is so hard. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried focusing on that. It is so easy for your brain to just... It's nearly impossible unless you've actually, you know, really focused on that and gotten that part down. Your brain's just gonna be like, I don't care if I finish this pattern. I'm just gonna hope that I hold my combo on this slider spam, for example, or, you know, it's just an example. It's pretty crazy, which is part of why I'll be focusing so much on reading this month, because and these interviews, hopefully, outside of the fact that they'll be entertaining for people to watch, a little bit informative, also for me, hopefully I can get a lot of different perspectives of a lot of really good players, and we can kind of go from there in terms of what people feel are the most important parts. That's really exciting to me. Are you still gonna really get back into Osu, do you feel? Because I saw you on Twitter, but it's very easy to, in the moment, be like, yeah, I'm hyped up! And then, you know, a day later, not as much.
Yeah, I think the break was just a temporary thing. Of course, I'll still be playing. But I don't know. You ever have those moments where you think you have a breakthrough and you think you're just suddenly really good at the game?
Every day.
And then you
for
can't get
5 minutes.
it's just like really demotivating. So I need a break, but I'll be back this week.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. By the way, if you have any viewer questions, go ahead and post them, Azer specific or in general, and we'll get to those. Kind of went through everything that I had written down a little bit faster than I expected. What do you feel about like Rohawk's approach, for example, which is like never retry, versus people that retry a ton? What do you feel about that?
I think it requires an absurd amount of dedication. It's really hard work, just like mentally. It's a lot of hard work, and you really need to believe in yourself. But it works. The results are there. Like,
never give up.
He climbed so fast.
Yeah.
He climbed so fast, and he's still like, I don't know. Even though he doesn't really have the scores that show it, in my opinion, I think he's one of the top HDHR players because that's what he focuses on. Like, just his absurd amount of like plays on maps that no one else has FCs on, I think is really spectacular. And I think most of that is due to his practice of just not retrying at all and just finishing maps all the way through. It's a great way to go around being consistent, I think.
So you would say you would completely back that approach as being the better approach?
Yeah.
Yeah?
For sure.
Okay. How do you, because for me personally, when I try that, I tend to very quickly, after like 3 or 4 tries, I tend to kind of black out on patterns, and I start to go autopilot, and I just start shit missing. Is that anything that you've actively worked on? Because I remember back in the day, about a year or 2 years ago, I remember you saying that you really focused on slowing your game down, is something that you said, and that stuck with me. What did you mean by that specifically? Was that a consistency thing? Was that...
So here's something that will apply to most viewers, actually. The number one mistake people make is something I'll tell everyone that I ever help at the game. I used to mentor people just for fun, and it's something that I told every single person, and every single person realized it and applied it, and instantly got better. People just tend to go too fast.
Doctors hate him. This one tip.
This one tip. It's really simple. It's really simple. People just tend to go too fast. Not in the way they're tapping or anything, but they just do patterns too fast. It's literally that simple. I think if you all just take the time to individually, it doesn't work for everyone because, I don't know, some people have told me they don't like playing that way. But if you take the time to slow down your game and just look at every circle and then confirm, oh, my aim is on the circle, I can tap it. And then after you tap it, you move to the next circle, you know?
Would you say that ties into to what we talked about just now, about what I felt personally would set people like Cookazy and White Wolf apart? Is there absurd focus on this completion of everything in a similar vein?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's just it's a very good general advice. I think it's
I definitely agree. I definitely agree.
And I think it ties into a lot of people nowadays praise me for how good my aim looks, how snappy it looks.
It looks really sexy.
It's entirely because of that. It's because I spend the time to look at every object, and it's so nowadays I've done it for so long that it's kind of subconscious. I don't actively think about it when I do it.
Yeah.
But I just spend the time to just make sure I know where every node is precisely, and then make sure that my coordination is on point, and my circle or my cursor is on each circle before I tap it, before I move on to the next one. That's
interesting because Toy actually, I've talked to Toy about improvement before, and he said something very, very similar, including the fact that he's done it for so long at this point that it becomes natural. How would you say, where do your misses then come from? If you are very, because I'm sure you still shit miss. What tends to be the reason, if it's not necessarily misreading or...
Well, for me personally, it's never really misreading in terms of like identifying how a pattern plays.
Okay.
But there are some cases where I don't know, I just get mind blocks on very specific patterns. Two come to mind. Dopamine?
Oh.
The triangle.
Do I know dopamine? Holy hell.
The triangle.
That one is terrible. Two triangles. Yeah. I think it's like, I don't even know. That's kind of showcases a lot.
Yeah, just that one, just that particular pattern, just as an example. I can never do it because I misread it at the wrong pace. It's kind of weird to explain, but I do get mind blocks like that tied to my reading, and it's not. I read it wrong, but I read it wrong all the time. It's not like I play it once and I'm like, oh, I misread that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay more attention to it next time. No, I misread it wrong every single time. There's a few patterns that exist like that in the game that I have issues on, but generally I think it just tends to be aim.
Okay.
I read the pattern correctly and like I tried to aim it, but I just couldn't.
That's interesting because maybe because that is your experience, the fact that your aim is mainly the reason you miss. Maybe that is a reason for you to feel like that is the most important aspect, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because people tend to, blame in a way. Like, that's why I blame reading, for example, because that is by far my worst aspect. So I feel personally like, hey, reading is the most important aspect because it's what I lack. And I feel like if that were to improve, I would do so much better overall.
That's true.
Hopefully, at the end of the month, we just come to a conclusion where it's like it's actually everything in the middle, and we're all wrong. That would be really really nice.
Kind of on a follow up to that though, I think you're right. It's because most of what I tend to play when I try to go for scores, there's scores that are HDHR that I view as very simple, but just extremely hard to aim. There's scores that like only Cookazy has scores on.
Yeah.
And it's all I play. It's all I play when I try to rank up. And there's scores that are worth a lot. And I think there's scores that if people just had better aim, everyone would have scores on them. Everyone would have scores on them. There's a lot of HDHR players that are more than good enough to have good accuracy on them, to do all the patterns and all that. They can read it. They just can't aim it. And so I feel like if that's a reason why I think aim is just the most important aspect. It's just because if everyone had better aim, or if you just had slightly better aim to be able to do those patterns and aim them consistently, you'd start seeing a lot more like 600 and like 700 scores on those maps that only like Cookazy has scores on.
That's really interesting. For me, yeah. I think as an afterthought, I think what it comes down to is kind of you have to have the base level reading to be able to go from note to note. Like let's say those big jumps on Inferno,
yeah,
that are super hard to hit. I feel like you need a baseline reading level to be able to really go from circle to circle on that, and then if your aim is on point in combination with that, then they're moderately simple, right? For you, you might lack a little bit of aim for it. You can read it properly, like you can go circle to circle, but you'll just derp on your aim. Whereas for me, for example, it's mainly my reading that holds me back, and the moments that I hit those circles is when my reading is on point, because my aim is on point. So I think it's a combination. Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud as we're going, because that's kind of what my idea for the interviews was.
You bring up a good point. You bring up a good point. Just there is a certain requirement as a, like you said, a baseline reading that I think is good to have, and I think it is kind of required to be able to do all these maps. And if you don't have it, I guess reading becomes an issue. But if you spend a lot of time just improving your reading in general, just playing really crazy stuff, like playing the stuff like the GM plays, playing low AR, playing easy hidden, playing technical maps with hidden, all that kind of stuff, you go like far above and beyond that baseline reading. So reading is never an issue.
Right.
Like, for me, in my experience, there's no ranked map in the game that has an issue with reading in particular.
Really? Wow. For me, there's so many.
Like, okay, sorry, that's not true, because obviously there's a bunch of maps from like the old maps that.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Like the recent maps, you know.
That's crazy.
So.
Yeah, a couple of viewer questions. How beneficial do you think alternating is? Do you think that one is better than the other necessarily? Is it just something that you kind of fell into because you had issues with your hands and it's less straining on your hand, or was it an active consideration?
I think, I think it depends from person to person. I think that alternating, if you're good at it, is beneficial, only because it opens a lot of new maps that you can play. You know, there's a lot of like alternating maps, just high BPM maps that don't necessarily have streams, but, you know, alt maps, you know?
Yeah.
Those
awkward 270, 280 BPM weird.
Yeah.
In the middle things.
If you're able to alternate at all, you can play them. It's great. If you can't, it's not great. You know, it's a lot of people can't play those, and then will complain about those just because they can't play them. They can't alternate, and they can't single tap at that speed. So
that's me. That's me.
So I think in that sense, alternating is better if you're good at it. But from my experience, from like looking, I don't know, I decided on this a few years ago, back when I really bothered to look at like HDHR number ones on like really high, like basically SS scores.
Right.
Back then, it felt like all the alternators in the game, even at the highest level of like accuracy, all the alternators in the game had like a higher unstable rate than all the single tappers. It's, I think statistically, it's much easier to be accurate when you're single tapping. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to like single tap, but it just means that if you focus too much on single tapping and then you can't alternate, then all you're doing is just you can't play those alt maps. I think that's all you're really giving up for it.
Well, for me personally, I can add to that in a similar vein, definitely, that when I only knew how to single tap, I was a lot more mashing in terms of my playstyle. Whereas now that I'm kind of starting to learn how to alt better, like I'm certainly not good at alting yet, but I'm starting to kind of get it down. I noticed that I'm much more focused on actual rhythm, because you can't just treat the notes individually, you have to treat the entire pattern. Otherwise you end up on the wrong finger and you don't know when to stop on like a kick slider, or not a kick slider, a reverse slider, or like a little triple. Like you have to kind of be calculating when you're alternating, whereas with single tapping, that's not a thing that is necessary. So it's a lot easier to be mashing, is kind of what I personally feel it comes down to.
Yeah, I get a similar question a lot, actually. People always ask me, because I'm good at alternating, they always ask me, oh, how do you do this pattern with your fingers? You know, like, do you start it on your index? Do you start it on what finger do you start it on? How do you do this? And I never ever paid any sort of attention to that, so I can't answer that. You know, it's just natural for me.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to the way you read notes. Like, I read with the rhythm. I don't read patterns at all. I don't read visually. I see a note, and I'm like, in my head, it clicks that, oh, it's in this part of the song, so I should hit something on my keyboard at that part of the song. You know?
Interesting. So. Okay. Because for me personally, when the better my reading gets, the more I kind of, like, let's say there's an alti pattern, I'll think to myself, oh, this is 5 notes, so I will end on this finger and then I will go on to the next pattern, which works. It's like a really fast process, and the better I get at it, the faster it is. But that then is completely different, apparently, from how you approach it.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to play if you're transitioning to alternating. I think it's a great way to learn, and when it becomes natural to you, you'll be fine. You won't actively think about it. It'll be second nature. It'll be subconscious. So you're not even going to think about it. But it's a great way to learn how to do the patterns. Yeah.
How do you to follow up on that? For me, I keep saying for me personally, but let's say you're not necessarily warmed up and you try like playing a 260 BPM map. It is exhausting to play, but then like you're warmed up like an hour later and you find yourself very comfortably being able to play it. Do you feel that stuff like tapping and streaming is mainly a physical attribute that you get better at? Or do you feel that it is largely related to how well you can read something?
I think both parts play in it to some extent. I think it's mostly like physical. I don't think reading plays that much into it, but I think it's like you said, it's a matter of having the baseline reading for whatever you're playing, and then you're good, right?
Right.
So I think because of that, the physical part of it plays a lot more into it. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because I
think some of it actually it's not exactly relevant to the question, but kind of is. I feel like a lot of streaming speed in general too.
Mm-hmm.
Just in my experience, I still am, but I was really bad at streaming, right? I think pretty notoriously I was like one of the slowest players in the top 50.
Right.
And at some point I changed my technique. I stopped tapping so hard and I started kind of optimizing the way I tap so that I don't have to strain as much and I can just generally go faster that way, right? And as soon as I did that, now I was able to have a speed that's more on par. You know, it's still not great, but it's more
adequate.
You know? Yeah. Like I can play some gore shit maps now. You know, like some pretty high level like that map just in particular. I think that map would be considered to be fairly fast. Like I'm still not good at streaming.
It's very stamina intense. But how do you feel about like let's say you have Freedom Dive, which is AR9 222 BPM.
I still can't play that one.
No, me neither. But say you put it on AR10, suddenly, at least for me, it is a lot easier to play because I'm a lot better at reading it. So it's a lot less stamina intensive. To what extent do you feel that is actually the case for you personally? Like higher AR is easier to keep up with physically?
Not personally. Because like I said, I don't read visually. I read identifying the rhythm. So
Right.
AR doesn't really like. It's the reason why I can play Easy Hidden, for example. Easy Hidden is what, like AR5, AR6, and I can still time things perfectly, and I can still read them perfectly if I'm able to identify where the notes are in the rhythm of the song.
Okay.
So the AR doesn't affect me personally.
Interesting.
But I know a lot of people function the way you do.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thing. Yeah.
Interesting. I think yours is obviously definitely better. And again, that might play back into that baseline reading level where you, even if it's AR9 or AR10, that doesn't matter for you. You're above that baseline, so that's not necessarily an issue. Which I think we might be able to say that someone like Kukazi is like an extreme example of someone that has a really, really, really low baseline, where it doesn't matter if it's AR8, 9, or 10. The lower they are, probably the less consistent. But yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. I never considered that might not be an issue for someone, honestly.
Yeah, I think it mostly comes down to experience. Like Osu's not my first rhythm game, and I've played several rhythm games, and I've had a very extensive in music and rhythm in general.
Yeah, because you used to play drums, right?
Yeah, I've played 8 years of guitar. I played 5 years of I played a lot of instruments.
Wow.
And I used to write music too when I was like 6 years old. It was great.
6 years, hell yeah.
So I have a pretty extensive, history of experience when it comes down to just simple rhythm, And even after I started playing Osu, I've been playing a lot more more rhythm-focused rhythm games. So
do you feel like basically
that,
anything in Osu is gonna be simple rhythm, for all intents and purposes? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought
mostly
so.
for one
right?
reason though. Mostly for one reason, and that reason is that in Osu you're always limited to having one object at a time.
Right.
So if you play something like Osu Mania or the different, genres of similar games, you can have like 4 or 5 at the same time, and then you have to keep going. It gets really high level, and that gets really tricky. And so because of that, I think Osu is very easy to read because it's always one note at a time.
Do you feel like playing stuff like Osu Mania helped in any way in your Osu standard?
I think certain games help in different places. I think I've played a lot of Psycho, and I've played a lot of not Osu Mania itself, but I've played pretty equivalent games such as like Lunatic Wave 2. I play a lot of BMS.
That's the thing with the the lanes, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much what Osu Mania is based off of.
Oh, right.
To give a simple answer to that, I think it helps a lot with your hand coordination. So it helps a lot with being used to having both of your hands being, coordinated together and not having one go ahead of the other, because you can't afford to do that in those games. It trains you very well because you have to use both hands, obviously.
Right.
So,
all right.
I think it mainly helps in that area.
All right. Dajen asks, is there any specific ways that you deal with being nervous or shaking? I mean,
that never goes away.
No,
never goes away.
I feel that is largely dependent on your own standards that you set for yourself. I feel like the days that I'm like super confident and like feeling like, oh, I should really just get an SS on this, I will not even shake if I get like a 99.6, even if it's a lot of PP. It really just comes down to your mindset largely, I feel.
You're right. Yep. I work the same way, actually. I think it's funny, like let's say for one day you set a really good score, and then for the rest of that day you have a really high standard for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm playing amazing. I just set this score. I'm so good in this game, right? I am the best player right now. And then you go on to play like
daily thoughts,
similarly hard stuff that on another day, you think, wow, this is really hard. I'd be impressed to get an FC on this, right?
Yeah.
But during that day, because you're so confident, you're like, I have to get an FC on this. Like, I'm playing this good. I should be able to. So,
I also feel that is largely, for a lot of people, the reason why they start doing so poorly on a map that they're retrying a lot, because every time you get a combo, you're kind of like, oh, this is my chance, and you kind of start to hyper-focus on every single chance that you get, so you kind of assign a lot more value to every play, and because you assign a lot more value, you start to fuck up a lot more easily because you're so focused on, I have to get this right.
That's true. Yep.
Is it better to get good in all aspects is to start or to master one aspect of the game and learn the rest later?
Depends on what you want to do, really.
Yeah.
I'll always, just personally, I prefer players who can play everything. That's why Ruruchi back in the day was so heavily respected, in my opinion, because he would play everything.
Yeah,
there was not a single thing in the game. There was not a single aspect of the game he wasn't good at.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a huge reason why he was perceived to be so good at the game, even though, like, regardless of his scores or his rank or anything.
I mean, because he was, right? It wasn't like overstated praise. He was just, he actually was really good.
But I think that it's not like something that's necessary. Like, I don't know, if you want to play this game just to play like Hard Rock, why should you play other things, If you only want to play this game just to become a good Hard Rock player, why would you have to play Hidden, or why would you have to play DT,
Yeah,
like,
no,
if that's what you want to focus on, then focus on it, Like, why not?
Definitely. And again, I feel like a lot of other aspects of the game will definitely help you be a better Hard Rock player, but once you reach a certain level on those other aspects, it's not necessarily going to keep helping you in your Hard Rock play, unless for some reason you get a lot better at Hard Rock and then suddenly your other aspects are lagging behind, so you kind of have to up them. But it's fine to have one thing that is way over the top. I feel like that is the main way that people stay motivated. A lot of people is to just have that one aspect that they're really good at. A lot of people don't want to focus on everything because that's not necessarily fun, because that means you're constantly confronting your own inadequacies, which is not why a lot of people play this game. They play it to feel good.
I think there's only two aspects of the game that can really like punish you if you focus on one aspect, and that's just tournaments. If you can only play one aspect and you want to play tournaments, you won't get far. You won't get far at all. You'll get shit on.
Yep.
But I mean, if you don't play tournaments, you don't care about them, or you're not at the level to play them, it's not a big deal, right? But I think it is. Let's say you do want to focus on Hard Rock. I think like Idki kind of brings this to light. But I feel like learning Hidden just to add on to your existing mods is pretty good if your intention is to rank up, because it kind of becomes second nature, it becomes a lot easier. And I think you're just missing out on points if you don't learn Hidden.
Index is another great example of that.
Yeah.
As well. True. A little bit of an old school, at this point, example. Wow, calling Index old school. That hurts my soul.
I told you we're old.
I know, man. Yeah, no, in terms of closing thoughts, I have two things written down. What would you say, in a little bit more than 2 words, and you've already touched on it, what are the best practices to really incorporate in your play, and what would be the worst practices to incorporate into your play?
So I think the best, I think both of those depend on what your intentions with the game are.
Let's go with just getting all round. Like let's put that as the ultimate goal on the wall of becoming an all-round player.
All-round player. Obviously, the best practice would be just to actually go forth and practice everything. That's a very obvious one. But I think one thing I tell a lot of people when they tell me they want to improve the game, I think when people get too focused on farming PP,
I had it muted.
But I think the reality of the situation is PP maps are like if you're playing a map with the intention of gaining PP, that map is too easy, and that map will not make you improve that much because it doesn't challenge you. You're trying to like get a perfect score on that map, right? It doesn't really challenge you. So I think a great way to improve in general at anything is just to always play something in the appropriate difficulty, something that challenges you no matter what you're doing. If you're playing Hard Rock, if you're playing DT, it doesn't matter as long as it challenges you, and it's challenging to pass, and you're not like playing whack-a-mole and getting like 60% on it.
Because that's a lot. That's the thing that's hard. Sorry to intercept. That's something that a lot of people fall into.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of honestly, if you guys remember that video I made, the discussion video on YouTube, that was mostly my point in that video, but I wasn't really able to like word it in a way that was good. So the point didn't really get across, but I think improving really ties down to not farming PP, because farming PP is not really something that makes you improve. Farming PP is something you do to test your results, but if you only exclusively play that, you're not going to improve. You have to play, you have to play stuff that really challenges you. You have to play stuff that you can barely pass. You have to play stuff that you're like, wow, I can't believe I just did that. I'm great at this game. I just passed this map. Look at this,
And how would you say you find the balance between, like, I always compare it to like trying to learn Russian without first learning the Russian alphabet, is how do you find the balance between just doing stuff that will then give you, make you feel good about like a crazy pass, but is going to give you terrible habits in how you approach stuff because you're just kind of whack-a-moling, but maybe it doesn't even feel that way, versus playing stuff that's too easy. What would you say are some indicators that something is on that level that is good to play?
I'd say just gauge it off of accuracy. Like if you're getting less than like 80% and you don't really know what you're doing, you're just kind of wailing around and like mashing, it's probably just too hard. It's probably just too hard. And if you're getting combos at all, it's probably too easy. Like if you're getting above 95 and you're getting like, you think you can full combo the map, then it's too easy.
How would you say as a good indicator is if you can determine the order of all the patterns, but not necessarily FC them? Would you say that is a...
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's a nice way to put it.
So for you, your main 2 takeaways would be focus really hard on slowing your game down and focus on every node individually, making sure you're on them before trying to hit them, just verifying, and just always being on that level of can't FC it, not mashing, Just play maps focused on that. Don't focus on PP. It's nice to sometimes do to like verify your improvement, but it shouldn't be an end goal. Am I saying those two things right?
On the first thing though is I think that doesn't apply to like AR 10.3 or DT. Just, you don't have time to do that. You don't have time to individually check each note. You kind of just have to wing it and like aim. But I think for everything else it applies.
I think that that's a great point. But I think for 10.3 and above, generally the maps that you're going to be playing are going to be maps that don't necessarily have difficult patterns. So playing through them is mainly going to be based on your already existing skill set, not necessarily on active reading of a pattern. Would you say I'm saying that right?
Yep.
Okay. And what would you say would be the worst practices?
I kind of touched on it, but I'd say the worst practices is just to exclusively play for PP. I think that's the worst possible thing you can do.
Right.
Towards your improvement at the game. I think that's not good.
Right.
For the same reasons I just said like 5 minutes ago.
And I think a little bit of context in that regard is if you're solely playing for PP, you might say, but what if I play for PP and I just up the PP that I'm playing for? The point is you're going to have to get like a 98% FC on something before you get that PP, which kind of means in terms of Azer's point is that what you're playing at that point is too easy for your improvement. So you're wasting a lot of time getting that 98, 99% FC when you could be spending that time on stuff that's a lot better to improve on. Am I saying that right?
Especially if you're not near the top level of the game. I think a nice way to look at it is that you could spend 2 months of your time trying to get scores of your current like PP level,
right?
And then you have a bunch of scores. Let's say you're 250. You have a lot of 250 PP scores, or you could spend 2 months of that time improving in the game, and then come back 2 months later, and now you're doing 350 PP scores. And nobody cares about your 250 scores, not yourself. Yeah. Nobody. Your 250 scores are worthless. So I feel like it's kind of like
demotivating time.
I'm just saying it's better to it's the improvement month, man. It's better to spend that time.
I gotcha.
Improving in the game properly than just trying to farm scores that will be completely irrelevant to you in 2 months' time.
Right.
I think that's my point of view on it.
Okay. And to tie into that, obviously, you have to, for yourself, then determine how you stay motivated. Like, obviously, if you play unranked stuff and it just kills your motivation, obviously, it's not a strategy that you're going to be able to stick to for a long time. But, yeah. Oh, someone said something funny. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I worded that wrong, but I hope people know what I meant.
No, I got it. He didn't call everyone worthless. That was not his intention.
It's gonna get taken out of context. I'm gonna be on Reddit.
If you don't have 350 PP scores, you're fucking trash. Stop playing. Get out of here.
You're all bad.
And here we are with being proud of our 500 PP scores, whereas nowadays the meta is like 600. So we're kind of self-burning.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're all trash.
We're all trash. So he's trash. Right? He's trash. Everyone's trash. That's all the conclusion really is. In our own eyes. Yep. All right. Well, that filled an hour. We did good. I think we got some good solid what's the word? Substance out of that. So, Mr. Azer, if you want to follow Mr. Azer on the Twitters, Azer
Foss.
Azer Foss.
I am Azer Foss.
Azer for Carrot R. Ost. Azer on the Twitch. So again, I'm gonna go into a break. Thank you so much for joining us, my man. It was great having you as our first guest. A little bit of a rocky start, but that's okay. That happens.
Yeah, it's okay. It's the test. It's the first time.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, no more typos.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man. We should do some multi-fun some point soon. Oh, yeah. That was always a blast.
It's been a while. It's been a while, yeah.
All right, man.
Fun.
Have a good one, dude.
See you guys.